The silent years, the great hall of the Galactic Assembly stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal, its dome reaching toward the stars that governed 1,000 worlds. Representatives from 15 different species sat in their designated sections, each area crafted to accommodate their unique physiologies. The Zolonians, with their scaled skin and towering frames, occupied the military sector. The ethereal whispers floated in their containment fields. The ancient Corvan elders sat motionless in their meditation pods. But today, all attention focused on one empty seat. The human chair had remained vacant for 3 centuries. Admiral Kethra rose from the Zolonian section, her 7-foot frame casting long shadows across the assembly floor. Her scales gleamed under the artificial starlight as she addressed the gathered representatives. The translation devices hummed to life, converting her guttural language into something each species could understand. Honored Assembly, we gather today to address a growing concern. Earth has ignored our last 47 diplomatic transmissions. Their silence spans 3 full centuries. She paused, letting her words sink in. Some believe the humans destroyed themselves in their primitive wars. Others suggest they simply lack the technology to respond across interstellar distances. A ripple of agreement passed through several sections. The Corvan elder, Zixith, whose species had lived for millennia, spoke in his ancient voice. The humans were cast out for good reason. They were violent, unpredictable, and refused to accept galactic law. Perhaps their silence is a blessing. Ambassador Velta, of the diplomatic Ashanti species, stood gracefully. Her translucent blue skin shimmered as she gestured toward the empty human seat. With respect, Elder Zixith, we cannot ignore an entire species indefinitely. If they have survived, they deserve the chance to rejoin galactic society. If they have not, she let the implication hang in the air. The assembly erupted in debate. Some species wanted to leave Earth alone. Others demanded investigation. The military factions, led by the Zolonians, insisted on sending a scout fleet to determine humanity's fate once and for all. Deep beneath the Earth's Pacific Ocean, in a facility that existed in no official records. Director Sarah Chen watched the assembly debate through quantum-encrypted feeds. Her great-grandmother had been among the humans exiled from galactic society 3 centuries ago. The crimes were real, but the punishment had been collective. An entire species banished for the actions of their worst representatives. Sarah's fingers moved across holographic displays that would have seemed impossible to the Assembly's greatest scientists. Around her, technicians monitored communications from across the galaxy. Earth had never stopped listening. They had learned every language, studied every species, and watched every political development in the galaxy they had been forced to leave behind. Director called Commander Torres from his station. The assembly vote is complete. They're sending a scout fleet to investigate our status. Sarah nodded, her expression calm. She had been expecting this day for years. How many ships? 12. Vessels, mixed species crew. They'll arrive in approximately 6 standard months. More than enough time. Sarah activated her command console. Initiate Protocol 7. It's time we answered their calls. Across Earth's hidden facilities, systems that had been dormant for decades came to life. In orbital stations, invisible to conventional sensors, crews began their final preparations. On the dark side of the moon, massive construction platforms completed projects that had taken generations to build. Humanity had used their exile well. Cut off from galactic technology, they had been forced to innovate. The result was something the Assembly could never have imagined. 6 months later, the Assembly scout fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Admiral Kethra commanded the expedition from her flagship, the Galactic Honor. The mixed crew represented the Assembly's finest officers. Chosen specifically for this historic mission, Captain Velkan, a young Ashanti officer, monitored the sensor readings. "Admiral, I'm detecting standard electromagnetic signatures from the third planet. Primitive radio waves, scattered heat sources. It appears the humans have survived, but at a very basic technological level." Kethra examined the displays. Earth looked peaceful from this distance, blue and green and wrapped in white clouds. There were no obvious signs of advanced civilization. No orbital platforms, no defensive networks, no interstellar communication arrays. Maintain safe distance and begin standard contact protocols. If the humans have regressed to pre-spaceflight technology, we must be careful not to traumatize them. The fleet moved closer, following procedures established centuries ago for contacting primitive civilizations. They broadcast greeting messages in multiple frequencies and prepared to make their presence known gradually. That was when everything changed. The stars around Earth began to move. Captain Velkan stared at his instruments in confusion. "Admiral, I'm reading massive gravitational anomalies. The background radiation is shifting. Something is affecting space-time itself." Before Kethra could respond, her flagship shuddered. Not from impact, but from something far more unsettling. Every system on every ship in the fleet went dark simultaneously. Life support, navigation, weapons, communications, everything stopped working. In the sudden silence of dead ships drifting in space, a new presence made itself known. They appeared. Without fanfare, without the flash of emerging from hyperspace or the energy signatures of conventional propulsion. One moment the space around Earth was empty. The next, it contained the largest fleet any Assembly officer had ever seen. Hundreds of ships surrounded the scout fleet, not the crude metal constructs the Assembly expected from a primitive species, but vessels that seemed to bend light itself. Their hulls were dark as the void between stars, and they moved with a grace that defied physics as the Assembly understood it. The largest ship, easily 10 times the size of Kethra's flagship, positioned itself directly ahead of the Galactic Honor. Its surface rippled like liquid metal, and strange energy patterns danced across its hull. Then it spoke. The voice came through every dead communication system in the scout fleet simultaneously. It was clearly human, speaking perfect Assembly standard, with an accent that carried centuries of isolation and determination. "Assembly vessels, you have entered the Sol system to investigate our status. We acknowledge your presence and welcome you to observe our response to 3 centuries of galactic inquiry." Admiral Kethra found her voice, though her vocal cords felt frozen. "This is Admiral Kethra of the Galactic Assembly. Identify yourself and explain how you have disabled our ships." The response came from Captain Marcus Webb, though the Assembly officers didn't know his name yet. His ship, the Redemption, had been built with technologies that incorporated everything humanity had learned from their forced isolation. "I am Captain Webb of the Terran Defense Fleet. Your ships are not disabled, Admiral. Your technology has simply been rendered temporarily obsolete. We have been listening to your debates. We have heard your assumptions about our capabilities and our fate. Today, we provide clarification around the scout fleet." The human ships began to demonstrate capabilities that shattered every assumption the Assembly had held about technological advancement. Ships phased in and out of visible spectrum. Others bent space around themselves, creating localized gravity wells that made them effectively immovable. Energy weapons that could slice through anything fired harmlessly into empty space, their beams creating complex patterns that spelled out mathematical formulas in languages the assembly had forgotten. "Captain," Velkin whispered to his admiral, "how is this possible? 3 centuries ago, they were barely capable of interplanetary travel." Admiral Kethra had no answer. She watched in stunned silence as humanity demonstrated mastery over forces that the Assembly's greatest scientists claimed were purely theoretical. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. "Admiro Ketchuha." Captain Webb's voice continued, "You have questions about our silence. The answer is simple. We were not silent. We have been listening, learning, and preparing. Every transmission you sent to Earth was received and analyzed. Every political development in assembly space has been observed and catalogued. We know about the Corvon expansion into neutral territories, the Zolonian military buildup in the Outer Rim, and the trade disputes that threaten to fragment your alliance. The implications hit the Admiral like a physical blow. If the humans had been monitoring assembly activities for 3 centuries, they knew everything. Every weakness, every secret, every carefully hidden political maneuvering. We also know," Webb continued, "about the species you have contacted and rejected, the civilizations you have deemed too primitive or too dangerous for membership, the worlds you have exploited and abandoned. You cast us out for being violent and unpredictable, but your own history since our exile has been marked by 17 wars, 43 territorial disputes, and the subjugation of 11 developing species. Around the human fleet, space itself began to shift. The assembly officers watched in amazement as massive structures materialized. Not ships, but something far more impressive. Orbital platforms that dwarfed entire planets. Energy collectors that harvested power directly from their sun. Defensive networks that turned the entire solar system into an impregnable fortress. Humanity had not just survived their exile. They had transcended it. Captain Webb's final words of this first encounter would be repeated in assembly halls for generations to come. "You came here to investigate our status, Admiral. Consider your investigation complete. Earth is no longer interested in rejoining the Galactic Assembly as a subordinate member. We are prepared to discuss a new relationship, one between equals." The human fleet began to withdraw, their ships fading back into invisibility as mysteriously as they had appeared. But before they vanished completely, one final demonstration shook the assembly scouts to their core. Every ship in the human fleet fired simultaneously, not at the assembly vessels, but at empty space beyond Earth's orbit. The combined energy release created a temporary star, a brilliant beacon visible across half the galaxy. The message was clear and unmistakable. Humanity had returned to the galactic stage, and they would not be ignored again. Asterisk, the fleet that changed everything. Emergency session of the Galactic Assembly convened within hours of Admiral Kethra's return. The great crystal hall buzzed with nervous energy as representatives struggled to process what they had witnessed. For the first time in centuries, every seat was occupied. Even the reclusive void dwellers had emerged from their dimensional hiding. Places to attend. Elder Zixith, whose 1,000-year lifespan had seen the rise and fall of civilizations, spoke first. His ancient voice carried the weight of centuries as he addressed the assembly. What Admiral Kethra describes is impossible. No species can advance so rapidly without external assistance. The humans must have allied with unknown entities beyond our space. Admiral Kethra stood to respond, her scales still pale from the shock of her encounter. Honored Elder, I have reviewed our recordings 100 times. The technology they demonstrated bears no resemblance to any known galactic design. It appears to be entirely of human origin. Senator Quinder, of the Progressive Meridian Coalition, leaned forward in his floating pod. His species had always advocated for inclusion rather than exclusion. Perhaps we should consider that our methods of measuring technological advancement are flawed. The humans were forced to innovate in isolation. Without access to established galactic technology, they had to develop entirely new approaches. The assembly erupted in debate. Military representatives demanded immediate action. Diplomatic factions called for negotiation. The merchant guilds worried about trade disruptions. But underneath all the political maneuvering lay a single, terrifying realization. Humanity had become the most powerful force in known space, and they had done it without anyone noticing. Director Sarah Chen watched the assembly session from her command center deep beneath Earth's surface. 3 centuries of her family's dedication had led to this moment. Her great-grandmother had been a junior diplomat when humanity was exiled. Her grandmother had been an engineer who helped design the first cloaking systems. Her mother had been a military strategist who planned the surveillance networks that monitored galactic space. Now, it was Sarah's turn to write the next chapter of human history. Director, Commander Torres called from his station. We're receiving formal communication. Requests from 47 different assembly factions. The Corvan elders want to discuss philosophy. The Zolonian military is requesting technical specifications. The Ashanti diplomats are offering cultural exchange programs. Sarah smiled grimly. And what about the assembly leadership itself? Radio silence from the central government. But our deep cover agents report emergency military meetings. They're scared, Director, really scared, as they should be. Humanity's demonstration had been carefully calculated to showcase power without revealing true capabilities. The fleet that had surrounded the assembly scouts represented less than 1% of Earth's actual defensive capacity. The orbital platforms were impressive, but the real weapons remained hidden in dimensions the assembly didn't know existed. Initiate Phase 2 of the Revelation Protocol, Sarah ordered. It's time they understood the scope of what they're dealing with. Across the galaxy, things began to happen that challenged everything the assembly thought they knew about space, time, and the nature of reality itself. On the Corvan home world, ancient monuments that had stood for millennia suddenly displayed new inscriptions, not carved into the stone, but somehow embedded in the molecular structure itself. The messages were in perfect classical Corvan, a language that supposedly no other species had ever learned. They contained detailed analyses of Corvan philosophical texts, offering insights that surpassed even their greatest thinkers in Zolonian space. Their most secure military installations discovered that their computer networks contained files that had never been uploaded, complete technical specifications for weapon systems that exceeded their most advanced designs. The files were signed with a simple message, "From Earth, with understanding." The Ashanti diplomatic corps found their private communications channels, flooded with perfectly translated human literature, music, and art. Centuries of human culture delivered in formats compatible with Ashanti sensory apparatus. The beauty and complexity of the works left their most sophisticated critics speechless. But the most shocking revelation came when the Assembly's greatest scientists gathered to analyze the data from Admiral Kethra's encounter. Dr. The preeminent physicist of the Quantari species, made the discovery that would change everything. The energy signatures we recorded, she announced to her assembled colleagues. They're not just advanced, they're operating on principles we've never even theorized. The humans aren't just using different technology, they're using different physics. The implications were staggering. While the assembly had spent centuries refining and improving established scientific principles, humanity had apparently discovered entirely new laws of nature. Laws that allowed them to manipulate space, time, and energy in ways that bordered on the miraculous. Commander Lisa Rodriguez of the Terran Defense Fleet stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, humanity's most advanced exploration vessel. Unlike the ships that had confronted the assembly scouts, this one was designed for a different purpose entirely. It was built to travel beyond the known galaxy, to explore the vast darkness between star clusters where no assembly species had ever ventured. "Commander," her navigator called. "We're receiving priority communications from Director Chen. The assembly has formally requested diplomatic contact." Lisa nodded. She had been expecting this moment. "Patch me through to Earth Command." Sarah Chun's image appeared on the main screen, transmitted across impossible distances through quantum-entangled communication arrays. "Lisa, it's time. The assembly is ready to listen. Are you prepared for the demonstration?" "All systems are ready, Director. The gateway generators are online, and our destination coordinates are locked in." "Then show them what humanity has become." ***. The New Horizon began to change. Its hull, which had appeared solid and metallic, revealed itself to be something far more extraordinary. The ship was alive, grown rather than built. Its organic components merged seamlessly with quantum processors and dimensional manipulators. It was a perfect fusion of biology and technology that the assembly had never imagined possible. Space around the ship began to ripple and fold, not the crude distortion of conventional faster-than-light travel, but something far more elegant. The New Horizon was creating a passage between dimensions, opening a doorway to regions of space that existed outside normal reality. Admiral Cathra, still stationed in Earth's solar system with her scout fleet, watched in amazement as the human ship simply stepped sideways out of existence. Her sensors registered the event as impossible. According to every known law of physics, the ship had ceased to exist. 30 seconds later, it reappeared in the assembly capital system, thousands of light years away. The message was clear. Humanity could travel anywhere in the galaxy instantly, without warning, and without any way for the assembly to track or intercept them. But the demonstration wasn't over. Commander Rodriguez activated her ship's communication array and broadcast on every frequency used by every species in assembly. Space. Her message was translated simultaneously into all known languages, a feat that required understanding not just words, but the underlying thought patterns of dozens of different alien minds. "People of the galaxy," she began, "I am Commander Rodriguez of the Terran Defense Fleet. For 3 centuries, humanity has watched your civilization from the shadows. We have seen your triumphs and your failures. We have learned from your mistakes and built upon your successes." The New Horizon began to transform again, its hull becoming transparent to reveal the impossible interior. Gardens that contained plants from 1,000 worlds, laboratories where human and alien scientists worked side by side, living quarters designed to accommodate the needs of species the assembly had never even contacted. "You cast us out for being different," Rodriguez continued, "but we have used that difference to become something greater. We are no longer just human. We are the synthesis of everything we have learned about life, intelligence, and the infinite possibilities of existence. Around the new horizon, space itself began to come alive. What the assembly observers had initially taken for empty void revealed itself to be teeming with activity. Microscopic probes, invisible to conventional sensors, had been monitoring assembly space for generations. Automated factories in the spaces between dimensions had been building and rebuilding themselves, creating an infrastructure that spanned the entire galaxy. Humanity hadn't just survived their exile. They had used it to build a secret empire that dwarfed anything the assembly had ever imagined. The final revelation came when Ambassador Veltar, speaking for the entire diplomatic corps, asked the question that everyone was thinking: what do you want from us? Sarah Chun's image replaced Rodriguez's on every screen in assembly space. Her answer was simple, direct, and terrifying in its implications. "We want nothing from you," she said, "but we offer everything to you. For 3 centuries, you have struggled with wars, resource shortages, and the limitations of your technology. We have solved these problems. We can share those solutions, but only as partners, not as subjects." She paused, letting her words sink. "And across hundreds of worlds, the galaxy is vast, and there are threats beyond your current understanding. Entities from other dimensions, machine intelligences from dead galaxies, cosmic forces that could destroy entire civilizations without noticing. The assembly, as it exists today, cannot face these challenges alone." Images began appearing on screens across assembly space. Battles fought in the darkness between stars, against enemies so alien that they defied description. Humanities hidden. Fleets engaged in conflicts that the assembly had never even detected, protecting civilizations that had no idea they were under threat. "We have been your silent guardians," Sarah continued, "but we can be so much more. Partners in exploration, allies in defense, teachers and students both, as we face the infinite mysteries of existence together." The choice was stark and undeniable. The assembly could continue as they always had, struggling with their limitations and fighting their small wars, while humanity protected them from threats they couldn't even perceive. Or they could accept a new reality where Earth was not just a member of galactic civilization, but its most advanced partner, Elder Zixith, whose ancient pride had initially rejected any possibility of human superiority, was the first to speak. "If what you show us is true, then we have been children playing with toys while you mastered forces beyond our comprehension." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "Not children, elder, students, and every student can become a teacher, given time and opportunity." The vote, when it came, was unanimous. For the first time in assembly history, every species agreed on a single course of action. They would accept humanity's partnership and begin the long process of transforming their civilization into something worthy of the infinite cosmos. But as the celebrations began across both assembly space, Sarah Chen allowed herself a moment of private reflection. Phase 1 of humanity's return was complete. The galaxy now knew that Earth had survived and prospered. Phase 2 would be much more challenging, because beyond the edges of known space, other intelligences had been watching, entities that had noticed humanity's demonstration of power and were beginning to take interest in this upstart species that dared to reshape reality itself. The real test of human determination and ingenuity was yet to come. Asterisk.